I'm gonna tell you like this. Tampa Bay got 2, Saints got 1, Falcons got 0. But everybody want to beat the Falcons, and the Falcons want to beat the Saints. And Tampa Bay just want to belong, but don't take my word for it.
Our NFC South division rivalry, I only go out my way to respectfully, the Falcons. I don't really care about Tampa. Tampa could have 2 or 3 years of good years and be like, oh, we're your rivals. No, you're not. This is not the AFC North. And all the team and the city cares about beating the Falcons 2 times a year. If you lose to Tampa, oh man, we let that one go. Shucks. You beat the Panthers, the city's not gonna throw you a parade. But when you beat Atlanta 2 times a year, the city's lit. Ain't nothing but a dirty bird.
Oh, God. What's going on, family? It's Simo the C Mitchell, a.k.a. Point Game Official, sipping everyday dose. And you tuned into another week of the Falcons Birdbath. If you want to stay up to breast on some of the breakdowns, thoughts, and opinions of all the Falcons moves going into training camp and the rest of the season, hit that like and subscribe button for us. We're going to talk about the Falcons' underrated wide receiver core and the snubs from Pete Prisco's CBS top 100 players in the league list that the Falcons had, even though we had 3 players on there. But first, we're going to hop back on it about our defense. With all the moves that have been happening this offseason, we've been talking a lot about the pass rush and some of our exciting rookies and even some of the guys that we signed. Now, I truly don't expect any more signings until they get into training camp. But one person that could be signed relatively soon is Asante Samuel Jr. There's been a lot of talk all offseason about the Falcons shoring up their cornerback room. And I can't blame them for that. Alford was not great last year, and even Mike Hughes has said that he wasn't satisfied with his performance recently.
I know I could play a lot better. I think I had a decent year. Like I said, I want to build off of it. I want to get my hands on more actual interceptions and help create turnovers, and that'll help bring wins as well.
It's actually become more truth than rumor that the Falcons were looking to upgrade the cornerback position because tales came out that they were actually targeting Jair Alexander. And now everybody's tying them to Jalen Ramsey. I don't love the idea of trading for Jalen Ramsey at this point in his career. And I'm not sure how much draft capital we have going into next year to actually pull that off. And he's an older cornerback. But Asante Samuel, who's only 25 this season, would be a lovely option if, and this is a big if, but if he is cleared from his neck surgery that he had earlier this spring. He's supposed to be attending doctors to actually get cleared for a checkup in early July. So after that point, we'll see. Now, if he's cleared, there's no doubt about it in my mind, he's going to be a highly sought-after cornerback. And I think he'd be very much an upgrade over what we have already. Just like they say with pass rushers, you can never have too many. And the same thing goes with cornerbacks and good defensive backs and good cover guys in your secondary. If you look at what they did this offseason by not re-signing Ulbrich at first and then bringing him back, it tells you a lot about the confidence level that they have in him, which is next to none, probably. They're probably not the most confident in Clark Phillips. Hence, they went out and signed undrafted free agent Kobe Bryant, who might be better than both of those guys potentially. I know I've said that I'm not sure if he's going to make the roster, but I mean, Alford isn't that great. And Clark Phillips is a guy who a little bit lacking in speed, and they say they're moving him back into the slot position. If the Falcons were to have an injury to A.J. Terrell or Mike Hughes, it'd be pretty bad for them. So the big question is how much capital do they want to give up to actually do that? And in my opinion, it's a much better option to sign him than to go after Jalen Ramsey at this point in his career and have to trade for him and actually have to pay him as well too. Asante Samuel has been linked to a few teams, the Dolphins and also the Philadelphia Eagles. I think the Falcons are definitely in the race for it. I don't want to ride Mike Hughes too tough because we were a little bit lacking on our pass rush last year, but he wasn't the greatest. I mean, he's serviceable, but I definitely feel better if he was a backup or a rotational piece to somebody like Asante Samuel, who, by all intents and purposes, actually graded pretty good in PFF scores when he was actually active. You guys tell me how you feel about Asante Samuels. Would you rather go with him or would you rather go with Jalen Ramsey if we have an option between the two? Or are you okay with just staying put where we are with the cornerbacks we have, which I guess you have to be okay with it if we're not able to do anything else or if that's what you had to go with. Let's transition over to the offense for a second. Recently, Pete Prisco shared his top 100 list of the best players in the NFL going into 2025. The Falcons had 3 of them on that list. Bijan Robinson being the highest at 39. You had Lindstrom at 43. And you had Jesse Bates at 73. Where we placed these guys on the list, I'm not 100% sure. Bijan Robinson, I think, was the 4th rated running back on that list. Ahead of him, I think you had King Henry, Saquon Barkley, and potentially the young buck up there in Detroit. Lindstrom was the highest ranked guard, and Jesse Bates made the list as he should have justifiably. But I believe the Falcons had a couple of other snubs on there. Arguably Kaden Elliss, but definitely Drake London is completely a snub on there. There's arguably some running backs and some other defensive players that I think Kaden Elliss could be arguably better than on that list, but he hasn't been a Pro Bowler and he hasn't been an All-Pro guy, so I'm not too upset about that. But Drake London, a guy who was top 5 in yards last year, top 10 in receptions, and top 10 in touchdowns last year, should definitely be on that list. There's a few receivers that he's better than on that list. One of them is Nico Collins, in my humble opinion. Ladd McConkey's a guy who was really great last year, but his production was not what Drake London's production was. But I don't know. You guys tell me in the comments, what do you think? You think we should have had more guys on that top 100 list? Or do you think we're right where we need to be at? Or you think we should have fewer guys? Let me know what you think in the comments. Also, Darnell Mooney's a really great guy out there as well, too. I talked about him in my last video, but he's a guy that creates separation and makes explosive plays. And Roddy White recently on 680 The Fan kind of chimed in about how he loves Drake London being able to get open and create plays for himself, and Darnell Mooney doing just that, creating explosive plays. One person he did say that he wanted to talk about was Kyle Pitts moving forward, and how he feels like the Falcons aren't utilizing him right and they're not running plays for him the proper way.
I just want to see a little bit more out of Kyle, because I think if he gets going and he's able to just get out there and make plays, it'll just take our offense to another level. I think we just haven't put him in position to excel. Like, when I look at him, he has such a basketball body type. And if you look at the basketball tight ends that have come through the NFL that have a lot of success at what they do, they always are in the seams. Like, they're seam runners, they're basic runners, you know what I'm saying? Like sticks. Yep. You know what I'm saying? Like, stuff like that where you can use your body to actually, get where you need to be.
Roddy did talk a bit about when you're a number one receiver, how they run plays to make sure that they get you open and move you all over around the formation. And I'm not saying that Kyle Pitts needs to be a featured guy in our offense or whatever, but having him as a number 4 option in our offense, arguably behind Drake London, Darnell Mooney, and Bijan Robinson for targets, I don't see why you wouldn't try to get him into that mix there. It just makes it that much better when you have to defend against that many targets. This year, I think we can see a little bit more of an improvement with Kyle Pitts as well, too. This year, he wasn't too far from hitting 700 yards, and I believe that a good season for Kyle Pitts could be somewhere around 700 yards, maybe 70 receptions or better. I'm not expecting us to try to get him back to 1,000, and if he does get to that, that would be great. But anything in between 700 and 1,000 yards would be great for Kyle Pitts this season. And it might warrant even keeping him around and re-signing him next year, just depending on how much he's going to command as a free agent in negotiation. Stated in the last video, the Falcons have an undrafted tight end that they really like a lot this year as well, too. And if he comes along very well, it could be bye-bye Pitts. Which leads me to my next point. I was talking to my father. He actually read the rankings for PFF's top receiving corps in the league, and he said that the Falcons only made it to number 11. Which, in my humble opinion, is a bit of a slap in the face and disrespect to a really great receiving corps and probably one of the top receiving tandems in the league. Of all the NFL teams last year, I believe that only the Falcons and the Lions had 2 receivers in the top 25 of receiving yardage. The Falcons were in the top 5 in passing yards last year, and they were in the top 10 in rushing, and they were 6th in league with total yards, if I'm not mistaken. Falcons have a very high-powered offense. If you're a person that's into fantasy football, the Falcons' offense is definitely a place you want to look at for some key commodities this year. I believe the Falcons are definitely going to be a top 5 offense again this year. There's no reason to see them slowing down, and I believe with having a more athletic quarterback with Michael Penix, having 2 top-notch receivers the way that we do. Now, if I had to look at their list, I'd say that the Falcons probably have a better receiving corps right now, today, at this moment, off of what has been proven, than the Chicago Bears do. And I believe that they probably have a better receiving corps right now today than the San Francisco 49ers, as well as probably the Houston Texans. My father's a huge fan of Ray McCloud for some reason. And last year, Ray McCloud had a breakout year by his standards. They had Ray McCloud and Kyle Pitts last year with over 600 yards, and Ray was almost close to 700. If your number 3 cornerback is that good, I believe that our 4th and 5th options are probably a lot better between us having Kyle Pitts. I don't know. You guys let me know in the comments. Where would you rank our wide receiver corps? Do you think we're a top 10 wide receiver corps, or do you think we're fairly ranked, or do you think we need to be a little bit lower? Now, I believe the Falcons I believe the Falcons' wide receiving room has a lot more competition this year as well, too. We have Nick Nash, who's an undrafted free agent, and Steve Smith talked a good deal about him before the draft, actually liking him. Now, he has some things that he might need to work on, but he might have a chance to actually make this team and make the active roster. Casey Washington, I don't think is necessarily a huge threat to him. And he's a guy who's a little bit still a project. Jamal Agnew, they definitely brought in as a return guy. And I believe they brought him in to actually try to get some plays directed toward him and use him as an offensive weapon as well, too, just a little bit. But all in all, this Falcons receiver room, you could actually have some younger guys not making the team and have mostly vets on the roster this year, because I don't think the Falcons will probably carry more than maybe 6 receivers. They could maybe carry 7, though, just depending on how things pan out and how they allocate resources to some of the other players. But again, you got to love the competition. Now, one thing I want to touch on is the importance of good coaching. Now, a lot of fans and a lot of people like to argue and debate whether it's X's and O's or if it's about the Jims and Joes. And there's no greater place that you can see this argument classically than when we talk about a coach like Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. 2 of the greatest, respectively, at what they do. Now, in my humble opinion, I think it's both. I think that great coaches need great players to be able to execute. It matters about how you develop these players and how you're utilizing players. But more importantly than anything, is how you adapt to gameplay situations. It's not just about the preparation at the beginning of the week. It's what happens when the team starts pivoting and they change up what they're doing. You got to adapt. Maybe the first 15 to 20 plays are kind of scripted, but after that, a lot of that goes out of the window. And in Jeff Ulbrich's earlier stint with the team, in previous years, one thing that he didn't like is that they didn't always have the solutions to adapt anytime teams would pivot and change things up on them. Now, we can definitely see from the roster construction this year that the Falcons are loving a lot of multiplicity. We have a lot of players who play similar positions and play the same positions but do different things that other players do. For example, no secret that the Falcons love James Pearce Jr. He's a guy that they're expecting to do a lot with. Per Jeff Ulbrich, the coaches, and even a lot of the players talk about the first step of him and Jalen Walker and the explosiveness that these guys have off of the ball. James Pearce Jr. is a guy who's deceptively strong and can really probably be a full 3-down player to defend the run and pass rush and be able to set the edge and not get eaten up by offensive tackles to a full extent. But he's also a guy who can drop in the pass coverage. And it's no secret that Raheem likes to drop his edge guys sometimes. Now, if you take one of those athletes and move them out, you got to have another guy that can replace him. Having Kaden Elliss and having somebody on the opposite side like Jalen Walker or even Leonard Floyd allows you a lot of that flexibility to do those things. At least 3 of our edge guys can do that for the most part, and having Walker, Pearce, and Floyd. Remains to be seen a little bit with Braylon Trice. I think he's a guy who could probably do that. It's not something that I think we want to see Ebiketie doing too much. But we've got a nice little rotation right there. But I'm also excited about a lot of our other defensive linemen. A lot of people have been talking about the loss of Grady Jarrett, but if you look at the PFF scores of some of the guys we have on our roster, some of them actually graded out better than Grady last year. And there's not a whole lot of drop-off. It's very solid. We were just paying them too much for with a little bit of production that we were actually getting from them. And we're paying these other guys tremendously less, and we don't need guys to be all-pro or even Pro Bowl defensive tackles, or even with our big edges that we talked about. Honestly, on the defensive line right now, we just need guys that are going to do their job. We need guys that can be playmakers by doing the dirty work and forcing things back inside. We don't need 8 or 10 sack guys from our bigger defensive linemen. We need guys who can wreak havoc and making it a little bit tougher from all angles with having more athleticism and speed on the field. More and more I'm looking at it, I'm loving what they might be able to do with the Falcons. I believe that Dorlus and Harrison are guys that they want to be able to have out there. The teams try to just run the ball up the middle and gut us, and we want to be able to have bigger guys out there. I know they want to be able to play our base personnel in that 3-4 set, being able to have an odd man front, and those are 2 guys that I think can definitely line up on the edge and be a lot more versatile and allow us to do a lot of other things, and then bump them down in some of our subsets, as rushing defensive tackles. They can win in the B gaps, but they also can set the edge out there as true bona fide edge defenders, and you got to have that versatility to be able to play in this league, and you want to throw a lot of different bodies at those guys to have your race car packages to tire down offensive tackles and keep getting after the quarterback. I'm not sure what's out there as defensive tackle and defensive lineman for us to actually sign in free agency, but I believe the Falcons are fairly confident in a lot of the guys that they actually have on this roster right now. But it's no doubt in my mind that we're going to have those actual outside linebacker edge guys out there on the field. We have all these mobile quarterbacks in the league. We're going to need to have actual linebackers in the middle who can spy the quarterback a little bit better, or sometimes even be able to use the defensive backs like our safeties or even our nickel backs sometimes to be able to spy some of these more athletic quarterbacks with the type of speed that they have out there. So you definitely want to be able to go versatile. All right, guys, that's our show for today. Appreciate you tuning in, and stay tuned for the rest of the offseason. I'll keep you guys posted on my thoughts and opinions and all the moves that we have the Falcons are making recently. You don't want to miss a thing, so stay tuned. I'll see you on the next one. C-Mo to C. Mitchell, Point Game Official, checking out for Falcons Bird Bath, baby. Peace.